I'd like to dedicate this sermon today to Marge Boyd on the occasion of her retirement. Marge is a woman who loves words. She chooses her words thoughtfully, and then she speaks them into being with grace and healing. Sometimes, as we just witnessed, we come up to the edge of words, and they don't come out. But most of the time, we say words. And our words matter, because words create. In fact, I'm going to ask you to imagine that every word you speak is an act of creation. In the beginning, God said, in the Gospel of John, in the beginning was the what? Word. And the Word, the Logos, the meaning, was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Words mean something. A word is not just a combination of letters. A word contains a whole world of meaning. And words become virtues in and of themselves. We know that we are polarized and divided in our nation right now. We've been talking about that this Epiphany season. And that we are out of alignment, not only civically, but more importantly, spiritually. And that is not only revealed by how we use our words, but I want to suggest today that how we use our words have become so normalized that is part of the cause that we are so polarized today. Was that meant to be an amen, that little mm-hmm? Okay, just checking. Our language is not only the symptom or the fruit on the tree, but one of the roots for where we are today. Our words lack decency. And words have energy. Could you feel that energy when Phil was dancing? So if he had spoken the word, that energy would have been in that word. Words have energy. You know, they did this amazing study on dogs. They trained 7 dogs to be very still, and they put dogs in an MRI machine so that they could track their brain movements. I'm not making this up. This happened. What they found is that dogs not only understand what you are saying, but they understand the meaning of the word, regardless of the tone. Because words have energy, and words have meaning. And dogs are able, certainly my dog, because she's so smart, are able to distinguish that. So you can say, "You want to go to the vet?" They understand the word vet and probably are not wagging their tail, even though you said it like they were going to get a treat. Because words in and of themselves have energy, don't they? It's not just the tone. I mean, that's why we all are so fond of sarcasm. Words have meaning, regardless of the tone. Words have energy in and of themselves. Some of you have heard the story that years ago now, I went to a weekend retreat called Horses and Leadership. I know that sounds weird, but it was a life-changing event for me. Because horses read energy. And one of the things you had to do was be in a corral with a horse, all by yourself, and you had to get that horse to follow you. So you would start walking, and the horse would follow you or not. But what you did was you made a statement. And if your statement was aligned with your energy and it was true, and you began to move because you were in alignment, that horse would follow you. And if you weren't, Believe me, because it took 3 tries. If you weren't, that horse would just stand there. Because words have energy. And we are out of alignment in our society. And a lot of that has to do with words. We're off center. We lack wholeness. We are divided against ourselves, and a house divided against itself. We are flooded with thousands of words a day. My research showed that anywhere from people speak 7,000 words to 15,000 or 16,000 a day. Who do you speak more words? Who do you think speaks more words, women or men? Oh, I heard both. That's hilarious. Actually, that was a setup. They didn't see any difference that women and men speak about the same. I just wanted to know what you thought about gender, that's all. We're flooded with thousands of words. In fact, we hear 20 to 30,000 words a day, probably mainly in this country. Let me ask you, how many of those words are used to lift people up? How many of those words actually build bridges and not walls? In fact, using words of connection and hope and healing are almost countercultural now. And part of why so many of us are so troubled with where we are is because we are not made to be like this. We are made to be whole. We are made to be at one with another, not all alike. Think about in your body how you feel when a harmonious chord is played. Let's have a harmonious chord. Now let's hear something discordant. Does it feel different? Can you play the harmonious one again so it doesn't last? There. We are made to be in harmony with one another. Elizabeth Alexander, who's the chancellor of the Academy of American Poets, said, "I think we are starved for fresh ways to talk about difficult things, for language that would elevate and embolden rather than demean or alienate." We saw this week that Rush Limbaugh was awarded the Medal of Honor. And I just want to say for a moment, this isn't about partisanship. I want to say for a moment that what that has done. We have rewarded vitriol. We have extolled hate. We have exalted bullying. And we've said, as a nation doing that, here's what matters. This is the person we want to lift up. We want to lift up someone that demeans and diminishes and degrades and dehumanizes. We have free speech in this country. People can say what they want. That's a good thing. It's a good thing. It is not a good thing to lift up, regardless of any political affiliation. It is not a good thing to lift up and exalt hate. And the kind of language that has been spewed. And it's not like all of us aren't guilty at it at some point or another in our lives. But I don't see any of us getting a Medal of Honor anyway. That says something. It almost tragically epitomizes what we have sunk to in our discourse, in our words. How we speak matter. Words matter. They disempower or empower. They harm or they heal. And what words we choose matters. I was reminded of something I read a few months ago in the book This Land is Our Land by Sukutu Mehta. And I went back and found the passage. He said, in Abu Dhabi, I noticed that the brown people, usually working in service jobs, were called migrants. While the white people, employed as executives or professionals, got to call themselves expats. A much more glamorous term than migrant. Expat implying wealth and choice, implying that one's migration has been voluntary. The words we choose matters. Religion has not always chosen its words carefully either. What does it mean for some in the Christian tradition to call people like me an abomination? I mean, I'm not perfect, but surely there's somewhere in between. Or morally inferior, or apostate, or of, my favorite, inordinate affections. Love that one. Christian language at times has been used to harm and to divide and to separate the worthy from the unworthy, the saved from the unsaved, the righteous and the sinner. But the Bible is also clear about the power of words and how we use them. Perhaps many of you have not read lately the book of James. Listen to what James says about the power of words. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers and sisters, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. Whoops, sorry, educators and pastors. For all of us make many mistakes. Anyone who makes no mistakes in speaking is perfect, able to keep the whole body in check with a bridle. If we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we guide their whole bodies. Or look at ships. Though they are so large that it takes strong winds to drive them, yet they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great exploits. How great a forest is set ablaze by a small fire, and the tongue is a fire. The tongue is placed among our members as a world of iniquity. It stains the whole body, sets on fire the cycle of nature, and is itself set on fire by hell. For every species of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by the human species, but no one can tame the tongue. A restless evil full of deadly poison. I know. I'm just reading the Bible here. With it we bless God, and with it we curse those who are made in the likeness of God. Wow. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. He ends with, those who consider themselves religious and do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. I know, right? I mean, that's some truth right there. So, friends, the power of our words. And I want to offer you today, I was at a retreat last weekend with Carolyn Mace, who's a medical intuitive and a mystic and has written a number of books. And she says, we've lost the vocabulary of our soul. Because our words are acts of creation, bonding soul to soul. Our words help stretch across to one another the mystery of us. And we need to restore some language of the soul, the healing language that our traditions offer. Because while religious language has been used to separate, the opposite is true. Spiritual language can be used to heal and to make whole. I don't know about you, but when Phil was doing the words that weren't in the Bible, that was humorous, and then he said the words that people loved, something just felt like I felt washed over by those words. There are times, instead of talking about just being down or being depressed, or that we should talk about the dark night of the soul. Because sometimes there are days I feel a little crazy, and there are other days that I feel if I'm not feeling a little crazy, maybe I'm not really paying attention. It's okay to be in that night sometimes, because it gives us an opportunity to invite the light in and to name it as a spiritual moment. We could talk more about sin. I don't talk about sin a lot because I had people talk about it so much my whole life. I thought I could go maybe half my lifetime without talking about sin again. But sin is, Carolyn Mace would say, intentionally harming another person. Maybe I need to think about sin a little more. And what if we brought into our vocabulary a little more spiritually infused language, words that describe a reality that is beyond us, however you want to name that, words that speak to our interrelatedness, words that dignify and words that connect. And if you don't hear anything else today, hear this. I believe that every word we speak moves the needle one way or another. It moves it towards healing and wholeness and connection and the common good, or it moves away from, toward division and polarization and separation. We are powerful people with our words. And we must create new language, new ways of speaking, to living ourselves into a future that our children and grandchildren will only have if we live ourselves into a new reality. And we need new words for that. We are trying to birth a new age, maybe from the fossil age to the solar age, or however you want to talk about it. And I want you to think of the new age of like a new child coming into the world. Birth is a messy thing. Right, women? Yes. Little painful? Yes. I haven't given birth myself, so I'm asking, little painful? Yes. Once that child comes into the world, what do we begin to do? We begin to use words. We begin to talk to that child so that that child might learn a language. I want you to think of this new age as a child just being born, and we need to find language and nurture this child, nurture this age. I'll give you an example. Ann-Lee and I, for those of you that are visiting, Ann-Lee is my spouse of many years. We just made a big leap and a big decision, a little outside the budget, but to get a Tesla. I might as well tell you because you're going to see it and ask me about it anyway. So we didn't want to spend. That was not in our budget, in our plan, but we came to a decision as a family that we did not want to use fossil fuels anymore as much as possible. And so Ann Lee did all the research. So then we went to the place. It was a totally different experience of buying a car, and neither one of us have bought a car for 10 and 12 years, I think. So, nobody came out and tried to sell us anything. We went in, there weren't hardly any cars around there. It's clean space. No typical, like what we used to think of as car salesmen, the stereotypical. Some young guy in a hoodie with a little name tag that said Tesla on it. At the end, we said, can we have your business card? Oh, we try not to do paper. We don't have business cards. Right. Okay, good. And then we are test driving a car, not the one we're going to have. So we're in it, and Mercy and I are in the back, and Annalie's in the front with the guy, and they go really fast. And so Mercy's like, Mom. So Annalie stepped on it, and we were like, woo, like G-force. And Annalie said, wow, look what happens when you step on the gas. And the guy said, didn't smile, nothing, just said, we don't use that word anymore. I was like, it's a new world. When we got back, I said, really, now here's my naivete. I said, let me look under the hood. Let me look at the engine. Really, and he's like, he opened it, and I'm like, he's like, there isn't an engine. I'm like, well, I know it's electric, but there still needs to be an engine. He's like, there's no engine. It's a new world. It's a new world. We need new language. And as we get there, the only way is, of course, through our actions, but also through the words that we use. How am I moving the needle? Can I look at using my words like a prayer? Because if I believe as I do that the divine spirit is in you, each one of you, what if I talk to you like I'm praying? Wow. Or what if I speak to you a little bit more like poetry? Like Marge, I choose my words a little more carefully. And when I want to maybe think before I speak. Elizabeth Alexander, I'll close with this. She wrote this poem for the inauguration of Barack Obama's presidency. Her mom was a teacher, a professor. Her father was the first secretary of, I think, the Navy, the first African-American secretary of the Navy, under Lyndon B. Johnson. When she was 1 year old, her mother was holding her at MLK's I Have a Dream speech. So she heard that language when she was 1. And this is what she wrote. Each day we go about our business, walking past each other, catching each other's eyes or not, about to speak or speaking. All about us is noise. All about us is noise and bramble, thorn and din, each one of our ancestors on our tongues. Someone is stitching up a hem, darning a hole in a uniform, patching a tire, repairing the things that need repair. Someone is trying to make music somewhere with a pair of wooden spoons on an oil drum, with cello, boombox, harmonica, voice. And a woman and her son wait for the bus. A farmer considers the changing sky. A teacher says, take out your pencils, begin. We encounter each other in words, words spiny or smooth, whispered or declaimed, words to consider, reconsider. Say it plain, that many have died for this day. Sing the names of the dead who brought us here, who laid the train tracks, raised the bridges, picked the cotton and the lettuce, built brick by brick the glittering edifices so that they would then keep them clean and work inside of them. Praise song for the struggle, praise song for the day, praise song for every hand-lettered sign, the figuring it out at kitchen tables. Some live by love thy neighbor as thyself, others by first do no harm or take no more than you need. What if the mightiest word is love? Love beyond marital, filial, national. Love that casts a widening pool of light, love with no need to preempt grievance. In today's sharp sparkle, this winter air, anything can be made, any sentence begun. On the brink, on the brim, on the cusp. Praise song for walking forward in that light. Amen.